1 week after the U.S. paused military assistance to Ukraine, including intelligence sharing, Washington says that it has changed its mind. The announcement follows talks in Saudi Arabia, where Kyiv said that it will back a U.S. proposal for a 30-day ceasefire with Russia. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said it's now up to the Kremlin to make a move. He added that if Moscow says no to the proposal, the U.S. would conclude that Russia is the real impediment to peace. Here's more of what Marco Rubio had to say after those talks with Ukraine and Saudi Arabia.
Today, we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation. Hopefully we'll take this offer now to the Russians, and we hope that they'll say yes, to peace. The ball is now in their court.
All right, the ball is now in their court. We've got team coverage of this developing story. I want to bring in our correspondent, Nick Connolly. He's in Kyiv, and our reporter, Stefan Zimons. He's in Washington, D.C. Gentlemen, good to see both of you. Stefan, let me start with you. What are the key results that the U.S. and Ukraine agreed on in Saudi Arabia?
Key result is that the U.S. is reversing, or actually putting the ball, as Marco Rubio said, into the Russians' court, and that is the first time. Also, this apparently reporting suggests that the Ukrainians came to this meeting with an idea. The Americans were supposed to listen to them, to their ideas, and they had the idea to create this or go for this ceasefire, 30-day ceasefire, but only for in the air, as well as long-distance missile attacks, as well as at the sea. And the Americans, that's the reporting, took it a little bit from there and said, no, it's going to be a ceasefire along the entire front lines, basically including all the fighting against Russia. Ukrainians agreed to that. That's what the Americans report. The president just had an impromptu press event at the White House, and he said that he is hopeful that Russia will agree to it. He said that there will be a conversation with Russia later today, local time here in the U.S., or tomorrow, and, quote, he hopes that we get this show on the road soon.
And Nick,
this is what America, what the White House celebrates as at the moment as a success.
Okay, Stefan, let me go to Nick now and just ask you, Nick, from where you are, I mean, how much of a successful outcome is this for Ukraine?
I think you're not going to find anyone in Ukraine who doesn't want this war to end, but I don't think they think that this is it. They don't believe that somehow magically Vladimir Putin has changed his mind. People here are convinced that he still thinks he can get all of Ukraine, or at least the majority of Ukrainian territory. So there's big skepticism, but this is just about the blame game at this point. Ukraine, especially with advice coming from London, Paris, has now decided to not let Trump blame it for being the impediment to peace, and basically is humouring Trump, even though they don't really believe that without security guarantees and the kind of explanation of what happens after a ceasefire, anything is going to last. And there's also the difficulty of implementing a ceasefire like this. The front line is over 1,000 kilometres long. How are you going to know who started firing first with an AK-47 somewhere in the bushes in Kharkiv region? But they are playing along, giving Trump his win, and pretty much certain here in Ukraine for now that Russia will not honour this long term.
And Stefan, do we know what is going to be the U.S.'s role in moving this ceasefire proposal forward?
It's going to be central. The president, as well as Marco Rubio, as well as his national security advisor, Mark Waltz, left no doubt about this. Thank you, Ukraine, that you agreed to the ceasefire, what the White House, what Donald Trump always wanted. Let's talk about this mineral and rare earth deal a little later. We're going to revisit this. That is the U.S. position here. And the U.S. is the one in the lead here. Trump insists on being in the lead here. The United States insists to be on the lead. They bring this to the Russians, and as Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, said, the ball is now with the Russians. If the Russians say, nope, that's not going to happen, then the United States is the party which has to adjust, and how this will happen or how this is going to work out, well, that remains to be seen. But it's definitely in the lead from the White House.
And Nick, let me throw this one to you. Ukraine has also agreed to conclude the minerals deal with the U.S. as soon as possible. What does that mean?
Well, I think we really don't know what it means, what the terms are going to look like, if Trump is going to try and renegotiate and make those terms more favorable to the U.S. than they already were. But I think basically the Ukrainians have just moved over to the kind of Franco-British position, which is just give Trump what he wants and know that you can renegotiate later, that he won't maybe actually remember what it is he wanted a couple of months down the line. This is about also buying time for Europe, right? If Ukraine is increasingly going to have to rely on Europe rather than the US, this buys crucial time while the US maybe will now restart supplies of ammunition, of other weapons, of intelligence, and eventually Europe will find itself probably bearing all the brunt of any kind of solution after a ceasefire.
DW's Nick Connolly in Kyiv and DW's Stefan Simons in Washington. To both of you, thank you.